Great. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Really depend on which part of the world you're in. We're right at 3 p.m. Singapore time, and welcome to this morning, this afternoon, or this evening learning webinar where we want to talk about coaching high performance. This is part of the continuous professional development program that CMA offers to our coaches to help our coaches to stay in shape. We understand that it's so easy to get that figures that you want during the 4 days in-person training and followed by the supervised practical session, and then thereafter forget all about coaching. So we believe that as a professional, we are committed to upkeep and to sharpen our craft. So as part of this continuous professional development, we offer a range of webinars on a monthly basis, 3 to 4 times in a month, with different varieties of helping our coaches to stay in shape. So this morning, this afternoon, or this evening, really depend on where you are. We are honored to have Mary, our program director from Netherlands and also from Poland. She's covering both locality, presenting to us a very juicy topic, which I think people from the executive workplace environment or as executive in workplace will find very useful. Coaching high performance. So without much further ado, I'm going to hand the time over to Mary. Mary.
Hi, hello everybody. Thank you, Ben. I'm Mary Sangewska, and I'm originally from Poland, but I'm based in the Netherlands. We are today here to talk about coaching high performers. And before I start, let me just introduce myself briefly. So I'm professionally doing female leadership coaching. So I work with female leaders and within the area of leadership. So everything basically from intercultural communications through remote leadership all the way up to their confidence. And I'm with Coach Masters Academy for about a year now. And I was actually originally one of their students, so it inspired me so much that I really wanted to stay and begged Ben to give me a chance to stay with them. And well, here we are 1 year later, and I'm really pleased to meet you all here and talk a little bit about my favorite topic, high performers. And why coaching high performers is different. They are a very specific group of people. So their characteristics is very different from an average performer in an organization. And today we are going to learn a little bit about their characteristics, but also how to differentiate between a high performer and high potential. These are two rather similar groups, but still we need a certain different approaches to both of them. And also we'll look at two common traps of high performers. So there are these two very common things that you're going to meet in your coaching conversations if you're working with high performers. And lastly, we're going to finish off with ethical boundaries. So as you might know, high performers are the ones that are way more exposed to burnout. And we'll talk a little bit how to recognize that our client might be potentially experiencing the burnout and what to do then. Now let us get started. So we have on the left high performers, on the right high potentials, and a little bit of the characteristics. Can everybody see my screen at the right place? So high performers, high potentials?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. All right, good. So all right, good. So if at any point you've got questions, just feel free to interrupt me and we're going to tackle them as they come. And if you prefer to leave them till the end, that's also fine. So we'll have a little few minutes at the end of the webinar to tackle all the questions. So let's have a look at the left side. So the first thing we need to know about both high performers and also high potentials is that they show up at every level of an organization. So it's commonly mistaken that high performers would be the ones that are at the top. Well, they are high performers, so they should achieve a certain level of career success. However, well, everybody has to start somewhere, so we will identify how high performers as well as high potentials at every level of our organization. We should be aware that regardless of the position, of our client, we might want to pay special attention whether they would fit the high performers or high potentials characteristics. So how do we know? There's this certain set of characteristics for high performance that would be confidence. They are definitely self-directed. They crave autonomy and they love failure. So basically, what I'm saying here is that they want to exceed their goals. You know, it's not that they want to achieve them. They want to go further. They want to go beyond that. Well, they are high performance. Good is not enough for them. So they really pay attention to showing to everybody that they are worthy of that title, the nomination of a high performer. So because of that, they might at times come across as aggressive, arrogant, selfish, and definitely you will observe that some of them have sort of inflated sense of skills or talents. And that is something that they are not entirely aware of. So it's not like they know that they are behaving in a way that can be received as arrogant or the way that can be received as selfish. They are very much focused on the results, and those results drive them. So in different cultures, such self-presentation might be received very negatively, and that's not always something that is desirable. So normally we talk about here about the skill of letting go. And if you think about the coaching training, we might have touched on letting go in slightly different context, which was letting go as in sticking to the client's agenda, right? So really allowing the client to choose where we are going to go to. But here, letting go, I would treat more like not getting trapped as coaches in categorizing our client. So even though they might come at times as selfish or as focused too much on them and you know, me, myself, and I, basically, it's not that they are doing it on purpose, and it's not that they are necessarily conscious of it. So not categorizing our client in that sense and letting it go is a very important part of establishing the trust and establishing the relationship. We'll get back to this relationship establishment a little bit later on. But let's just for now say that it is sometimes difficult to kind of look the other way when we notice that somebody is perhaps not acting with the best interests of others at hand. So now let's have a look at the high potentials and see what's the difference there. So they are definitely naturally motivated to learn. So these are people who are seeking opportunities everywhere at all times. They are impatient. So if the organization or a coach cannot provide these opportunities that they are seeking so badly and timely manner and match the pace that they want to have, we are risking that our high potential is going to get bored. And once that happens, he's looking for different engagements. High potentials and their impatience is also showing in it's also showing in a different context where they really want to, let's say, focus on a long time horizon. They are in their heads, they are already like a year from now. So they are impatient. They don't want to stick in one place. And that long-term horizon, this is something that that makes them always think about what happens next. Always think about what is the end goal, what is the path I'm going to take, and how to adjust that path accordingly to my needs, according to where I want to be. That poses a little bit of a threat, that they are very distracted in terms of now. They find it difficult to focus on now because really they are all the time analyzing how something is going to play out for them, so that in a year's time they're going to be where they really want to be. And we will often see that they are so concentrated on the future that they are actually not necessarily performing well in terms of present tasks. And what I mean by that, it's not that they are, kind of letting their current role to be parked aside, but it's more that they might not be fully engaged in it. They might not dedicate all of their attention to what's happening at this moment, because they know ultimately this is not the place where they want to be. And connected to that is the next point. They also never arrive. And what that means is, I really like that expression, they never arrive. Imagine a world champion and, like an athlete that knows the taste of an enormous success. He knows how it feels like. So once he wins, he's not going to just stop, pause, focus, and start observing the winner's picture. He is going to immediately move on to thinking, what is my next race? How in the next race I can perform even better? How can I beat my own time? So it is never about pausing and congratulating yourself, because ultimately this is not what is at the end of your path. So it is very hard for them to acknowledge their achievements. They always want more. They always push forward. And as they are pushing forward and they are really focused on the path that they are going to take, they also want to be included in defining those paths. So in decision making. And we'll notice that also in a coaching conversation, that once we are going to get a little bit into a leading conversation, which of course never should happen, but we will see their withdrawal. They like to be in control of what is happening. So we'll see later in the coaching approaches where to help the high performer to, discover the high potential within, so that actually they can kind of take bits and pieces from both of them and create like an ideal employee. Let's put it that way. So once they want to be included in this decision making, and they really want to influence how is this path going to play out, we will notice often that they want to take the responsibility way before we might think they are ready for it. And that is also connected with the leadership orientation. They are the ones who take initiative. They are the ones who really like the responsibility, and they really like to put themselves in an uncomfortable position where they can try how great or how far they can reach. So these are the people who are the high potentials. These are the people who are often identified, when identified in a conversation, as high potentials. or within the organization, they will be groomed for the leadership roles. They are the ones that we really want to invest in from the organizational point of view. So also when they get to coaching, you will notice that not always they will feel they need it. And that might be a bit of a challenge at the beginning, especially to establish that trustful relationship, so that they feel that they can connect with you, and that coaching is not something to keep them controlled by their organization, but this is something really to calibrate their talent and to really help them grow. So as you can see, both of the types, they are quite similar, but there are these unique bits and pieces that really allow us to differentiate between the two groups. And now you might ask, which group is better? Who do we initially want as a client? Who do we initially want in an organization? And I would say that ideally, we want to be able to allow them to be both in one person. So if you look at that quote by Thomas Edison, if we did things we are capable of, we wouldn't astound ourselves. Now, that quote is very true to both groups. They both dream big. They both want more. Now, if we are able to identify within a high performer a high potential and make him aware of that, that is the point where they will feel they are unstoppable. That is the type of an engagement we want. Now, studies show that actually lots of high performers, they turn out to be high potentials. However, in contrast, lots of high potentials don't necessarily turn out to be high performers. So once you've identified a high performer, most likely you are going to coach them towards unleashing this high potential within. Now, if you identify a high potential, it's not necessarily the case. There might be still things that they need to develop further before they are able to actually thrive in their professional life. So it will be more skills-oriented and more self-reflection-oriented, in that sense that they have to realize lots of things for themselves before they can move on further and really reach that state of being in the future. Now, once we know exactly who are the high potentials and who are the high performers, let's have a look at the traps that high performance get into. Before we get to that part, are there any questions so far regarding the recognizing of the high performer or high potential?
Hi, Mary. This is Shiraz.
Yeah, go ahead, Shiraz.
So I'm an HR business partner working with a multinational company, and we do this quite regularly, identifying the high performers and the high potentials. But as a company policy, we prefer not to let the individuals know how they're categorized. And you just mentioned that if we actually tell them, it sort of takes them, or has the potential to take them to the next level as well. They're really more engaged. Just wanted to get your view on what's the best practice. If you're not really disclosing this, does that make a difference, or do you feel that we should be going out and talking to them about their potential goal and then sort of leverage that?
Mm-hmm. All right. So thank you for that question. I think so. If we look at the characteristics of the high performance and high potentials, and we will notice that as they, for example, want to be included, or as they are craving autonomy, and they are confident, but they still need praising. So my personal view on that would be that you don't necessarily need to disclose it. But there needs to be a certain certain extent of letting them know that they are very valuable to you, because they themselves realize that. And that's where comes this inflated sense of skills. They think that they are valuable for you, and they have this sort of belief that your company is so much better because of them. And I think that disclosing necessarily, if you identify them as high potentials or high performers, might not be as necessary as really letting them know how valuable they are and being transparent on what you think might be their path forward. Because for both group initially, setting kind of impossible goals and letting them know that the challenge is there waiting for them is very important. So I don't know if that answers your question.
No, it does. That's something that we try to follow as well, but maybe not as well as we should. So thanks.
Yeah. All right. Perfect. Anybody else?
Mary, I've got a question.
Yeah, go ahead.
And this is probably relating to your experience of coaching female leaders, women leaders that are at the top. And it's about how I see like the high performers, the characteristics that are there. And I see a lot of women that are able to demonstrate those like positive side of things. And then they are also very self-aware in terms of women might come across as quite aggressive, quite arrogant, quite selfish if we put ourselves out there. And I wonder, would that decrease their performance because of how they think they will be perceived by others, and whether you've got any experience relating to that?
So I think that is a very valid question. In terms of women in leadership, there is another aspect that needs to be taken into account, and that's the fact that they need to find their own way to self-represent themselves. And a lot of them are confused in that topic, because you have basically two options. A lot of them identify two options. One is behave like a man and put yourself out there, and then be perceived as strict and emotionless person. And that's a lot of times what I hear. It is their assumption that this is going to be the result of that. Or try to stay feminine, try to stay confident, but then how do you do that and still stay on top of your things? So there is like this other aspect of confidence that very much directs their thinking. And a lot of times, as you said, they are self-aware, but they don't act on that. Would that answer your question?
Yeah, that does. And those two options, both are quite hard.
Actually, women are often identified as high performers, and even more often as high potentials, because they have this natural drive to gain responsibility over others, so that leadership orientation is highly visible. Just that not all of them feel that they are perfect enough to actually voice their self-awareness.
Yeah. That's true. Like that low in our own confidence. Or on the other side, we're so confident, and then we voice our needs, and then wonder, oh, have we gone too far? Have we been too aggressive in that situation?
Yeah. So there is this other aspect. I think that there is a difference between coaching male in terms of their leadership and their high performance, high potential aspects, and coaching women, and that is connected with the talent development and the way that we acquire skills differently. But maybe that's a topic for another webinar. We should think about that for the future. Okay, let's move on. Anybody else have a question here?
Yeah, Mary, this is Tim from New Zealand. I'm looking at the definition of high potential, and so they're leadership oriented. Can you conceive of a high potential person who is not a leader? Or is the definition of potential in your mind, does that include leadership potential?
No, I would say that leadership potential and people who are identified as high potential, they are two different things. But high potentials are leadership oriented in the sense that they really crave the responsibility over others, and they want to take initiative. They want to kind of nurture other people around them. And in that sense, they might not necessarily have all the leadership skills yet, but one of their characteristics as a high potential will be that they will eagerly take on opportunities where they can lead others, regardless of the fact whether they actually can do that or not.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah?
Yes, thanks. Yep.
Okay, perfect. All right. So guys, let's move on to our other topic. If you still have any other questions, maybe you can type them on the chat, so that if we have enough time, we'll try to answer all of them. And now the traps. So let's get to it. First trap out of two that are really, really common is the emptiness trap. And we could kind of identify it by hearing from our coachee that they've got everything, sort of, I have everything that I wanted, but I feel empty, or I'm bored because I can do what I'm doing with my eyes closed. There is nothing there that challenges me. And I have everything, so that means there is nothing higher that I can reach for. And ultimately, this is something that they really crave, that challenge, that, getting out of their comfort zone. And another kind of link here would be the isolation issue. So because they are often very well performing, because they are often reaching where they want to be, they move way faster than others. And it feels sometimes that they are not feeling lonely, but feeling alone, if you know what I mean. So there is nobody around from their circle of peers who they can relate to. So it feels like, they are so fast and so pushing forward that they are leaving other people behind, people who they started with. And that creates that kind of emptiness feeling. On one side, it is about having a challenge and, I know everything I'm doing now so well that I'm getting bored. There is nothing beyond that I can reach for. And on the other side, the relationship side, we can see that it is this feeling of being alone, of not having a person to relate to. And oftentimes they will say that they can't really voice their issues because, well, they've been working so hard, they've been always achieving, that other people start expecting from them that they are always going to be like that. And not having a person at the same level makes them fear admitting that something is not going the desired way, because there is nobody who they think can understand the place they are in. And for us as coaches, it means that we have to take a peer-to-peer approach a little bit, and we'll come to that later. But what is really important is that we are understanding in that sense. So we have to build our relationship towards the understanding and toward the possibility of them connecting with us on all the levels, not only on the coaching level, but also feel us as people and feel what are the limitations for us and what are the experiences that we've had, so that it makes it more credible, let's say, for them to feel that, okay, you've been there, you've done that, so I can relate to you. You might know what I'm actually going through. And it's really important for them, because it's, you know, they always say the top is the loneliest place in the world. So for them, this is something that that makes them struggle both professionally and emotionally. Now, another trap number 2 that they are often getting into is the imposter trap. And you might have heard of an imposter syndrome, right? Which is basically about feeling that even though you've got the knowledge and you've got the experience, you are still not acting. Other people will still not perceive you up to the level that you feel you're at, and you kind of don't feel like you can own it 100%. You can own your knowledge 100%. But here, the imposter trap is a little bit in the direction of people saying, you know, people admire me, but I feel lazy. Or I'm surrounded by people who always say yes to me. And this is a little bit connected with that expectations that we grow towards high performance, that they've always been the best. Why now it will be different? They are obliged almost to actually be the best. So they set higher and higher goals. They beat already the average, but then they still want to, as you remember from the characteristics, they don't want to arrive at the goal. They don't want to just achieve it. They want to exceed it. And once they want to exceed something that's already higher than the average, that's already higher than their previous high performance, they are starting to reach for impossible things. And the imposter trap comes in when people say to you, oh, you are amazing, but then you yourself feel like, yeah, but this is not yet the maximum of me. I want more, I want higher, I want better. And it makes you feel lazy. It makes you feel that, you know, taking a half an hour break for lunch is actually a 25-minute waste of time. So if they get to that stage where it gets to an extreme, where they really think each second can influence their whole life, their whole career, this is the moment where they are definitely fallen into the imposter trap. They feel lazy even though everybody else sees that they are amazing. And this is something that's sitting in the head. This is something that is one of those fake assumptions that we make about ourselves. And as a coach, being able to bring it back to a client and ask them, well, how true is that assumption to you? How is this actually playing out in your head? And get to know a little bit in-depth perception of theirs on what makes them really feel lazy. Is there something that really drives that not giving yourself a permission to be lazy? Because that's all what it is. It's high performer that is not giving himself a permission to break, not giving himself permission to slow down, because all of those things in his head will influence the fact that he's maybe not worthy his high performer title. Maybe he is not proving to others, not standing up to an expectation that we've developed. And of course, you can't coach the whole world around our coachee, right? But making a coachee aware that it sits in his head that those expectations might not be as high as they are expecting them to be, you know, it can really kind of unlock them to give themselves that permission. So when I was just telling you that, something came to my mind, and that is, we have in Polish, where I originally come from, a saying that you always measure others with your measure line, you know? So high performers are used to achieving amazing things. Now, when they think of what's expected from them, it's not going to be just average. They think that the expectation will be even higher of what they can do, because that's ultimately measuring others with your own perspective, you know, with your own measure line. So I think being able to bring that up in a conversation is also a very, very useful and important thing. Now, if I might just show you a quote of one of the top high performance coaches: success doesn't solve your problems, it just creates higher level problems. Now that sums up basically what I've been talking about in the imposter trap. So once you set one goal, the next goal is going to be only higher, and the expectations are going to be only raising. So pacing that is a very important skill, also coming up in the coaching conversation. Now, just to quickly check in with you, any questions, clarifications at that point before we move on to our next part? So the approaches to coaching high performance, anybody?
I've got a comment rather than a question.
Yeah, go ahead, please.
Thank you so much, Mary. I feel like you're coaching me by talking about those concepts and traps, because I can definitely relate a lot personally to it. And especially the last bit about our own meter, or how we measure ourselves, and how high expectations we have for ourselves. And then me as a coach, I actually find that ripples out to my coachee, that if I have high expectations, I'm actually not allowing my coachee to fail, to learn about themselves or the people that I'm leading. So then that's quite tiring for the coach as well as for the clients that way. Yeah, so it's been quite interesting hearing about that. So thank you.
Great. Oh, that's a nice realization you've made there. You know, from my own experience, I can tell you, guys, that for me, for example, as a coach, I've always thought I would also identify myself with high performers, and that's why I actually like to focus on that topic and coach people like-minded. But for me as a coach, it meant that I had that assumption in my head that they are expecting from that conversation basically for the whole world to gain peace, if you know what I mean, you know? Like I thought that their expectation from the conversation is going to be that high, when actually it was, you know, just that. And that often puts a pressure, as you are saying now, on a coach to perform. But you probably notice that once you yourself focus on performing, it's practically impossible to be really deeply listening or to be really deeply present, because ultimately then you are just trying to satisfy yourself. And that's something as coaches that we have to really hardly work on.
Yeah, and relating to that trap of imposter trap probably is also that high performers, or I find myself often looking at things, what's wrong about the situation, what can I do better, and I can always do better, rather than appreciating, celebrating, like taking the goodness of achievement rather than not arriving.
Yeah, it often feels like waste of time. So that's one of the things that I mentioned before, that it often feels for them waste of time. Now, if we look at the approaches to coaching high performers, it actually comes up here as let me have a quick click. So it actually comes up here on that slide that pacing and that managing them to be able to stop and not seeing that as wasting their time. But let me get back to that one in a second. So starting from the top, be present and listen deeply. Well, that sounds like something very obvious. But now, what it really means in terms of coaching high performers, we have to listen to the extent where we can hear their heartbeat. And of course, as much as that is, a metaphor, I would say that we have to listen to the things that are unsaid. We need to be attentive in a sense that high achievers will not willingly share the fears, not willingly share the complaints or concerns that they might have. It's something that they perceive as a weakness. And as long as they perceive it as a weakness, they will not trust you enough to actually share it with you. So being truly present, where you are able to hear that some things were left out from the conversation or from the sharing, and then lean on that trust, lean on that relationship for you to be able to uncover that. So without letting them feeling exposed, that is a really important part. We have to lean back on our trust between a coach and a coachee so that they don't feel exposed. They don't feel that they are sharing a weak spot. And that might sound weird, right? Because we should realize what are our weak spots in order to work with them. But it is really something that comes up in an unconscious mind of a high performer, that it is connected with building that trust and safe space. Because if I am going to talk with my coach and expose myself that I might not feel performing up to a standard, it basically makes me the weak one. It makes me the one that is maybe not standing up to those expectations. But if I have a person I'm talking with who also can relate, who also can connect on this deeper level with me, that makes it a whole lot different. So how do we build that trust and safe space? I would say one of the best approaches is to meet your coachee as an equal. High performers will want to know your experiences. They would like to know that you've been there, you've done that you are meeting them as a peer, and that will enable you to level that position in the relationship. Because if they feel you're higher than them in the coaching relationship, this unconscious mind that I've just mentioned will kick in, and they will not want to show you their weaknesses. Because once they have somebody, from a higher level, they will want to perform, of course. They are high performers. That's what they do. They perform. They prove that they are worth it. So we have to manage to get ourselves on the same level. And that might be challenging because it requires a certain extent of transparency from our side as a coach. So as being able to tell them that we have our own limitations, as being able to tell them that we perceive something as our weakness, might be a good way to start unlocking that trust and building that connection on a personal level, that relating connection, so they can actually feel that it's not going to be a weakness because you as a high performer or you as a person who's achieved success also have those things. So that transparency might be a tricky one, but it really helps to establish a safe space for them. And now, let's have a look at the next approach, which is letting them lead. And I think that what's most important that comes in here is the power of silence. So with high performers, we often need to check in on the impact of coaching and see if they haven't moved on to another goal already. So they are fast. They are expecting us to be as fast as them. We've got to match the tempo. So especially if the high performer is a high potential, or we're working towards that, we'll notice that they figure things out relatively quickly, and they want they feel that pressure to immediately implement things, to immediately execute, to act on what has been said. And I think that here it is important not to be, as I sometimes say, the slave to the process. So you'll notice that in the conversation with a high performer, you might need to jump some of the parts of the conversation. So it's really sometimes too obvious for them to talk about something. I remember one time I talked with a very interesting lady who is definitely both high performer and high potential, and we went on to this empowerment part of the conversation where we really want to kind of embrace in that accountability that we've just built. And I noticed that she is becoming a little bit annoyed. And when I asked about what's there, that I can sense this annoyance in the air, she said, well, you know, it's all great that we are trying to really push it, but I already know it. Like, it's already there. Like, why would we waste time talking about that if I already know it? If I say I'm going to do that, I'm going to do that. And I think that was one of key lessons actually for me, that they get annoyed if you don't match with their tempo. They move on to the next thing as soon as the previous one is solved, and it's them dictating whether something is solved enough or not. So as a coach, we have to be able to really navigate within a conversation, jumping from side to side of the process so that we can match with them, not the other way around. So I think that what she really meant is that, you know, if she is already aware of it, there is no point of saying it out loud. And in a normal coaching conversation, I would say, well, it's still good to say it out loud, to see how it comes out, to see whether there's something still behind it, to really embrace what we've been talking about. But for them, it feels that we are not getting them. That, you know, that's where we are a little bit risking losing that connection, because they will immediately think like, oh, well, she can't keep up. She didn't get what I've just said. I said that I know it. I said that I'm going to do it. So we've got to be able to let go of some parts of the conversation if it makes our coachee bored. Now, the next bullet point that I put there was putting your relationship as at risk. And here, that is, I think, really connected with the previous part, because really letting them lead also means that we have to find the balance between them kind of rushing through things and us being able to ask about uncomfortable topics. We have to find that balance between listening to the content of the story and then helping them figure out the context before they move on to the next thing, concluding that this one has been solved. So here that again, we fall back on our relationship with them. It's really the trust and the safe space that dictates basically whether your coaching conversation is going to be successful or not, I would say, because a lot of things depend on whether you are able to tell them, look, this is the truth, or look, being transparent here, I noticed this or that. For me, that would be my weakness, for example. So I would say hide nothing with high performers. They are reaching high, so they know that they've got to do lots of work. And they are willing to do that. They are more than happy to do that. So I would say that really having a look at your relationship as something that is there, whether you challenge it or not, will unlock you as a coach to be able to actually risk it. Because if we don't feel that this relationship, this connection between us and a client is settled really deep down, we will feel afraid to take certain steps. I would say that sometimes one of those steps will be talking about the relationship building. That's something that high performance might not pay much attention to. And also another thing I'd mention here is being, how to put it best way, being able to really set an unimaginable goal, whereas being honest about the journey to that goal. So this content and context, and also the relation part, asking obvious questions, sometimes to a little bit rattle them, and then it unlocks that possibility, this window of opportunity for them to really say something that we can work with. So again, one more time, the relationship, that's what we fall back onto. And setting impossible goals, I've just mentioned that one, and what that really means is allow them to be to dream big. If you start asking questions about, we sometimes do, how rational something is, or how realistically possible something is. These are the questions that they hate. For them, there's nothing like rationally possible, or everything's possible. There's nothing they can't do. That's their belief. And starting to challenge that part might actually turn them into seeing you as an enemy, as a person who doesn't believe in them. And that would never happen if you yourself would deeply understand them. So again, getting back to the connection. Manage pacing, I would say here, that's this ability to make them stop, ability to acknowledge what's been already achieved. And sometimes that's all they need. Sometimes they are so focused on pushing forward that they constantly feel they are working hard. They constantly feel they are on the way, let's say. So they never arrive. So in that sense, they feel constant stress. So managing that pacing of their thought process might actually shed some light onto what do they need as a person to really start seeing that being on the way is not the only activity that they are supposed to be doing. And lastly, last but not least, fun. So for some of them, it will be unimaginable to allow themselves to have fun. And making our coaching conversation fun, it might be really contributing to our relationship building. And by making it fun, I don't really mean like, oh, let's go bowling together. But really, what I mean by that is allowing that bit of them drifting away from the topic, or allowing that bit of them being terribly honest about some other people, and not trying to stay diplomatic. So really connecting with them in a sense of matching the characters, I would say, making it fun, making it for them a relatable experience. All right, so we've went through some of the approaches. Of course, there must be more. These are just some of them that I think work really well. Any questions here before we move on to the last bit, which is the burnout?
It's Suki again. Sorry.
Hope I'm not going too fast.
I'm not sure if I'm getting what you mean by put your relationship at risk. Do you mean like having enough trust in the relationship, but at the same time challenge them enough so that they don't think it's a waste of time? Is that what you mean?
Yeah, so I mean, sometimes trying to, like, not being afraid as a coach to, for example, ask a question that you know they are going to perceive as waste of time. Or sometimes share a different point of view, not necessarily as your point of view, but try to, do something that will knowingly rattle them in a sense, and trust that it will not affect your relationship. Is that a bit more clear now?
Yes, it is. Thank you.
Okay.
Great. Anybody else? Any other questions?
Mary, can I make a suggestion and see whether how this will work? I think we already passed the 1 hour timeline, and there's a lot of good stuff content that you have. Would you like to make this a more interactive platform where some of the coaches can just opens up and use the existing rich content to interact with you?
Yes, sure. Let's do that, of course.
Yeah. So would you be able to surrender the host back to me, and then I can facilitate for you?
Okay. I will stop sharing for a second.
Yeah, thank you. So guys, we're going to turn this platform into an interactive platform in which we can talk about real case, kind of like real case scenarios, and then Mary could then use some of the content that has been communicated, and then we can deep dive to see how we can serve you in a way. I mean, how we can use this content and use it in a more practical and relevant way that will help you to add values. Okay, so quite a good, it's a very rich content with lots of good nuggets or principles and theory. So great. So I'm opening up this platform for you to interact with Mary, and of course, we are feel free. Anyone from the floor are free to respond to any of the questions. Juicy questions.
Right, guys, let's get started with that. I'm really curious about all your questions and all the comments you might have. So go ahead, please. And the silence. Okay, I can see a question on the forum to share the slides. Ben, is that possible to send them as an attachment?
Yep, certainly that would be. I mean, with your permission, that would be great.
Yeah, I would love to share them with you, but I can't see the button of sharing the file.
Can you make just email to me, and then I'll sort it out for you.
Okay. All right, perfect. All right, guys, so what are you thinking? Tell me. Who'd like to start?
Is that Donna? Donna, you're on mute.
Okay, can you hear me now?
Loud and clear.
Oh, yes.
Okay. I can relate to some of the things you said, especially that impatience. When I had it in coaching sessions and I thought, yep, I had that insight now. I know exactly how it has to be. Let's move on. So that not to be rude, but and it's not the talk about time is essential and all that. But then I am bored. I've got my insight. I know what I need to do. I have the intelligence to see these are the steps, and then basically for me the session can be finished. It's kind of, yeah, let's part.
Yeah, Donna, that's very true. I think that it then makes it, if we are as coach not able to catch that breakthrough, let's say, that moment where you say, I've got my insight, that makes it very challenging for the coachee to actually stay engaged, because for them, everything's been said.
So yeah.
All right. Anybody else that has been coaching high performers, or perhaps is going to, or looking to move to that direction?
I've got a question about high performers often don't admit that they've got weaknesses and often don't ask for help along their journey too. Then how do we bring them towards the awareness that coaching is actually going to help them to be even better at what they're doing?
I'm sorry, but my line a little bit broke. Could you repeat your question one more time for me?
Cool. So my question is that high performers and high potential people are often very good at what they're doing, and they don't think they need help. They don't admit their mistakes either. And if the coach doesn't match up to that high expectation, they're not going to have a coach. And my question is, how do we bring them to the awareness of having a coach is actually going to help them to become even better, when at the start they don't even think they need a coach?
Mm-hmm. I think the best ideal solution is be able to, within the first conversation, make them realize something that really they see as valuable, and kind of proving to them that you are useful to them from the very beginning. That's something that they judge based on experience. If they can judge that, okay, this has been an insightful thing, then they are going to give you a chance. It doesn't yet mean that they are all in, but it means that they are at least willing to give you a chance. If the first conversation is going to be about, just everything and nothing, it will just make them more sure that they don't really need you, because we've been talking about everything that I already know. Why would we continue doing that? But also I would say that it's not really that they don't admit. You said that they don't admit the mistakes. I think they do admit the mistakes to them personally and in the private space, but they would do everything not to admit them publicly. Good. So that's where also this connection part comes in. And if you are able to create that safe space that they perceive, it is still private space. It's not like exposing them and admitting to things publicly.
Yes, I think, Suki, one of the things that I thought maybe that I would like to introduce as a toolkit for people, for those who are working with, not just necessarily with high performance, but how can we catch people at a tactical thinking level and strike a chord in them to heighten awareness. So it doesn't have to be on high performance, but high performance, high potential tends to have that tendency, mainly because they are always in a way of doing. I want to accomplish, I want to achieve, I want to, arrive. So in that frame of thinking, usually the analytical thinking space is often the predominant thinking process. So they are using logical thinking to resolve certain things. So when someone is in a logical thinking, it's so challenging to get them to heighten their awareness, because it's just not possible for heightening process to exist in a logical thinking process to reflect. The way to do that is what we call to shock the brain, to collapse the logical thinking temporarily so that we can catch and switch to another mode of thinking. one of the most useful techniques to shut down the logical thinking is to introduce double negative. Now, since we are in this class, just let me introduce one favorite tool of mine. If I do recognize my client is very analytical and the content is really focusing on trying to do a lot of things. So you find you find, so the double negative works like this. What would not have happened if you do not do this? so they were like, okay, so they will have to pause for sure. What would not have happened if you have not done this? Okay, good. At least you get their attention. They have to process a little bit. So you get their attention. They know that you're talking to them. So you have their attention. Then now they start to think. Now, this time they're not trying to solve it logically. Because of the double negative with the intention phrased in a negative way, that is, you have not done this. So they know that they should have done it. And high performance always, no, I mean, not say high performance always, it's a very generalized statement. There will be a tendency for us not to pay attention on things that need our attention or things that really matters most. In an attempt to try to arrive or achieve, we often not pay attention to some little things or things that really matters. So frame that in as your subject matter, as what you do when you do not do that. Like for example, I need to respect authority. Good. Obviously, high performers don't respect authority. They like to do it at their own whim, okay? Because I'm autonomous and I'm the boss. So they don't always submit. So compliance is always a challenge for managers managing high performance. Great. How can I strike a chord of awareness for them to be a better, to be more prudent? So introduce the double negatives and say, what would not have happened if you do not seek permission from your boss? Try to be logical. Try not to be reflective. I mean, I'm just plucking a case out to show you how the double negative can have an impact to bring that sense of, it will not necessarily brings into like awareness, but it certainly creates, it certainly break the pattern of thinking for non-reflective thinking to have a place to give rise for more reflective thinking. And then the subsequent question would be, so why are you noticing that? What are you aware of, or what are you noticing about this that does not serve you, depending on really what the experience is? It could be a thinking thing, a doing thing, or an attitude thing, or whatever that is. So bring that up and ask, one, if it's a double negative, then you reduce to single negative. How would that not serve you? So again, I'm playing with negative frame. Because for a reflective thinking in a highly logical space, we have to think on the opposite pole. Okay, how would that not serve you? So when you find that the person actually paused and converted to a little bit more reflective thinking with these two negative frame inquiry, then you can then turn that around on the third inquiry by saying, so what have you learned over that last 5 minutes of your conversation? So at least, it makes people to be a little bit more reflective, not necessarily awareness, but reflectiveness, being able to reflect, give birth to awareness process. Does that help?
Yeah, I think that helps, because when you ask those questions in a negative way, it actually makes me reflect upon, okay, what is within that is not already top of mind, which is really, really good. And I think like what Mary said as well, like make the first conversation really valuable. I agree with that. And then I'm an internal coach, so it's even one step before then. How do we get people to even come to a coaching conversation? Let alone making that first conversation valuable. So one of the strategies that I thought about is actually use those very powerful questions like that. How does it serve you in a really single interaction, so that they go, this is what coaching actually is. And that's the value of coaching. And then they will go into that first.
Precisely. So deposit a lot of emotional account first if you're working with high performance. So use the core competency of trust and intimacy, acknowledge and respect the work of the individual, even though they got a track record of bad experience with them. But you can always acknowledge the progress and celebrate their success, and respect their contribution. The more we do that, the more the emotional accounts will rise. And coupled with those techniques that we taught you, that will certainly have a lot of buy-in in terms of that this is not going to be another intervention initiative, but really a developmental initiative to help me to achieve success.
Yeah, really agree, because what I hate the most, what high performers normally hate the most, is people solving their problems for them. I'm like, no, I don't need more problem solving.
Yeah, thank you. Hope you find that useful. Now, Mary, back to you.
If I can actually add on that, I would say that, two things that come to my mind. One is that we should differentiate between the performance conversation and the development conversation. And definitely for high performance and also high potentials, the second one is the more valuable one, because they are perfectly capable of assessing their performance. And again, for them personally, inside themselves, they are able to be very honest. They can be very critical, and development of conversation takes away that risk of them being exposed and really, within an assessment metric. And the second thing, when we were talking about them reflecting and kind of challenging that logical thinking, I would just say that we have to also, as coaches, be prepared for hearing from them, I'm learning nothing, or there's nothing new. And I think that sometimes they challenge you as a coach to see what is your reaction to that. Sometimes you take them away of that logical thinking successfully, and then they say something, but then they are like, I'm still learning nothing. I'm still getting nothing out of that. And not being really kind of distracted by their answer, but trying to ask them so if you're learning nothing from that, what kind of question or what kind of attitude would help you learn something, and then let them take the lead, even in that sense that if this part you say that you're learning nothing, that's perfectly fine. That's one way. And the other way is I sometimes try to let's say we take them away from logical. They start getting more, we can start hearing more emotional words, and then when we ask for them to reflect, they say it's kind of still the same, and they circle back to their topic. And then you can ask them, well, if you look at it from a different perspective, something that wouldn't normally make sense, how could you interlink it? How could you interlink things that you just said in a way that is not really obvious? So try to look for a non-obvious interlinks, and then they start, well, I could maybe link this with that, and then that gives you clues where to ask the next question.
Yeah, perfect. Great, thank you. Anyone else got other juicy questions that you'd like to talk about? in working with coaching high performance?
I have a kind of question.
Go ahead, Milena.
I don't know if it's a question or a kind of observation that I've made in my training till now. I believe it's quite important or crucial, in fact, to be as a coach and a coachee or a client at the same, I don't want to call it mental level, but let's put it in these words. But I mean that it is really, I've noticed in some coaching conversations a kind of mismatch on the capacity level, thinking capacity level between the client and the coach. And now I have a question to both of you, Mary and Ben. From your experience, there must have been cases, I mean, it's not only regarding your age or life experience, but it relates to this. You must have come across clients that are, let's say, let's call it on a higher level, or I mean, I'm referring more to Mary because of the age, I guess. Like you probably had to deal with, you were dealing with clients that were some top executives or whatever, and if they are high performers and high potentials, which they are, they must have had difficulties to connect with you. I mean, what is your approach? What was your approach? And I'm sure there have been cases when it just did not work because of some maybe personal reasons, or the client was not able to let it go, let's say. So I would like to ask you about your experience.
Yeah, right. I think that's a valid question. Like I actually get that question a lot from certain cultures. Surprisingly, for example, in the Netherlands, I've actually never been asked about my age, but in other countries it does happen. So I actually always explain to them why it can be as valuable as being coached by a person who's 50, 60 years old and having 30 years of on-job experience, and I think that is related to what coaching really is for me. And for me, coaching is really to be able to facilitate the process of thinking without interacting with that, so without being involved in it. And every time when a person comes and says, well, what if I'm going to have a topic that you've never experienced? Well, that's even better, because for me, I'm never going to be coming to you from the point of view as, well, I've had that same issue before and I applied this certain solutions. I'm not going to ask you any leading questions towards you coming up with the same idea. So I think actually lack of experience in certain fields helps me to stay out of the details and really take it into the bigger perspective. And most of the time, if we talk about what coaching is for me and how do I see it, that solves the problem. So of course they decide for themselves if that suits them. But if I'm thinking if it ever played a role as in coaching somebody or not, I don't think so.
Okay, thank you. I mean, if I can add something on this, it's not about, maybe I didn't make myself very clear. It's not about really, I mean, your age or this, but it's, I mean, we are in the similar age, so it's not the case. But I've been in the business world as well, and I know top executives that are so fixed in their mind that they can immediately understand, let's say, the capacity of the coach. And to put it in different words, let's say I'm now in a training group and we are more or less in the same age group. I mean, the 10 years difference don't make such a big thing. But you can notice from the conversation, sometimes there is a mismatch of capacity, if I can put it correctly. I think this question goes more to the direction to Ben. I could have seen that if it would be a different coach, the outcome would be different. I don't say it better or worse because it's not the case, but different. That's what I meant.
I think the point here is that we need to differentiate two things. We need to differentiate between usefulness and impactfulness. And certainly every coaching conversation has a certain degree of usefulness for the client. But eventually, this is a service line. We had to accept this. I wish I had white hair, and now you understand why. That it is more valuable for me to have white hair. Trust me, I lose many deals to coach CEO mainly because I don't have white hair. Even how
You can
great
dye them. You can still dye them.
I can't make wrinkles on my face, which I'm not sure I would like to do that. But certainly, team, certainly, Richard and Donna, with great respect to your age, you are a valuable asset as a professional coach, and client in the real business world who are prepared to pay thousands of dollars for a coaching engagement will love to have you as their as their coach for their CEO or directors or investment, mainly because this is a service industry, and look, besides credential, is a total package. And I honestly tells you that I lose out many deals because on my profile that they see, oh, good, looks quite decently old. But when they interview me, oh gosh, he's so young. He's so filled with energy. And look at the way he speaks. Definitely, this is a no. For our CEO or director, even how impressive my profile is, my client's database, even how big the company is, Deloitte, Accentis, and I work with these companies, but when they're choosing their professional coach to coach their CEO or directors, the moment they turn on the video and they see this guy here talking, this is so no. So this is a total package, which I'm not going to deny it. So, but we have to differentiate between usefulness and impactfulness. On the real business world, clients certainly expect that as you age, I always tell students, professional coaching is a place, is an industry where you are like an old wine. The longer you keep the wine, the most expensive your value is. Because there is that association that as you mature in your age, you carry with you that rich experience, and coupled with your professional development with credential and the clients expect you to have a different thinking capacity. Okay, someone that matches that director's role or CEO roles. And certainly when a client feels that the thinking capacity of the coach is lesser than where they are, it's certainly going to impact the impactfulness of the coaching conversation. They will find usefulness in the conversation. They will still take away some good process, but at the back of their mind, they will always have the big question marks in terms of, where we're coming from, in terms of experience and our maturity. So this is an industry that honors maturity, not just credential. When you come to the point of where, of making an impact. So Tim and Richard and Donna, you are in a good shape.
And can I just add that I always tell people that age 50 is the best age when you start to get white hair, because you can say things and people will take it. You don't have to defend it. You don't have to find difficult arguments. They just take it on face value.
Yes.
But I think there's also a part in the kind of preparation that you do as when you introduce yourself as a coach or an interpreter, in my case, or whatever. If first of all somebody else recommends you, or apparently somebody has recommended you, or you can point to 5 years experience in something. I mean, what I do currently is that I've been working with this customer for 12 years now.
Yes.
That in itself commands some kind of respect. You can, I'm not saying you can say anything, but you can say some things and people will start listening to you.
Yeah.
You then have to follow up and make sense, obviously. And you have to say things in a pondered way. I used, when younger, used to be very, I used to take positions very strongly, and I've come back from that and tried to nuance the way I suggest things. And that kind of manner, once you have that initial respect because somebody else has recommended you, because somebody has said you've been doing this for so many years, because somebody says you are particularly well versed in coaching CEOs, in building materials companies, I don't know, then that's a kind of lever which you can use to then start showing whatever your wisdom might be. Precisely. But there are cases where I could not walk in. I could not walk into a young tech industry and make them believe that I've got anything to contribute. And that doesn't really tempt me to do so either.
It's true, Tim. You'll find it hard in my company.
Yeah, sure. But I just love you, Suki, so that's fine.
I hope that so like make it something more real for you, Milena, that in terms of thinking capacity, that it certainly does make a difference. Yes, it does make a difference at the impact level, but certainly not at the usefulness level of the coaching process.
Yeah, that's what I was in fact thinking about. Thank you for your explanations and experience sharing.
Yeah. Great.
If you could just explain to us, Ben, how many thousands extra we can ask per white hair.
Tim, I'm starting to like you. I think we can form a good friendship over. Good. Any other interesting questions that you? Suki, go ahead, Suki.
Yeah, to add up on that point, like as a coach, we are in partnership. So if we feel like it's not as impactful, we don't have to take that client on.
Precisely. You're absolutely right.
We can challenge them and say, you know what, I feel like this is not being really impactful for you. How do you feel about that?
I will do that very wisely. I don't want to take down my own brand. I would say in a different way, instead of using the word impactful, I would say that, if it feels like this conversation is not getting anywhere, how would you like to have this conversation differently?
Yeah.
Sure. Rather than not impactful, you're just destroying your own brand. You can say that because you're an internal coach. I can't do that if I'm an external coach.
That's true. Like what Tim has said before, some nuance and approach. Much younger Tim would not have been nuanced by myself. Yeah, very great.
Yeah. Nuance comes. All you have to do is wait for it.
Thank you. Thank you for such a rich discussion. Anyone has any other thoughts in regards to what Mary has presented today along this topic of coaching high performance?
Yeah, hi, if I can say something.
Go ahead.
Yeah, Leader Black here. Hey, I was just sort of reflecting and thinking about the difference between high performers or the high potential. As a coach, when you have differentiated as to which type you are dealing with, what difference or what different approach do you have going into a coaching session, knowing the type of person you're dealing with?
Mm-hmm. That's quite a tricky one to really size it up. I think at the coaching conversation, in terms of the coaching process, there wouldn't be that is, I mean, it will not impact the coaching process, but it certainly impact the way you created the focus for the conversations. For a high potential, usually they want to work on growth opportunities, developmental path for them to excel. So that is where the conversation tends to focus more on that level. High performance, usually if they have been sent to coaching, very likely they would like to address certain gaps. Because for performance, they will always be achieving something, but as a way of achieving something, they have caused, it's like an elephant trying to move forward, and they will literally crash down any trees or any obstacles that is in front of them. And there's a lot of things that we need to damage control So if a high performance has been sent to a coaching conversation, the sponsor will be very nice to phrase it as, oh, I want them to grow. But at the back of the mind, they have caused enough damage, and well, we love them to have the result, but can you help them to be mindful not to overrun certain places and crash down certain things? It's more like helping them to gain awareness along some of the things that they are not paying attention to.
Mm.
Whereas a high potential, the sponsor doesn't really put that as a hidden clause, but more like challenge them, stretch them, inspire them, shake them up. So that change in terms of the coaching focus at the focus level, that very likely for a high potential, I like to set a focus as more future oriented. As in, what is it that they are longing that they can start to create? Whereas if this is a high performance that has been sent to coaching, I like them to be able to take stock and reflect more on what has happened and what is their insight around what has happened, and use that to consider how they can move forward. Not so much in terms of future to create, but what they need to be pay attention to as they are achieving those targets. Does that help?
It does. That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, so rather than just coming blindly into a coaching conversation and let's create a focus, now we can create a focus more artfully in the context of where they're coming from. And then direct the coaching process more to either a future orientation or what has happened in the past leading to now, to have a more kind of like what are you able to recall, what are you noticing here when those incident has happened, what's the observation around those pieces, what are you learning from those pieces, and draw out from that perspective.
Nice. That's great. Thank you, Ben.
Thank you. Great. Well, we are almost up our time, unless there is anyone who got burning questions. Can you say burning question? This is only young guys will say burning. The team will say, is there any wise questions?
Actually, Ben, sorry.
Let's have Tim to entertain us for a while. Tim, what's the comment?
Ben, I'm just curious. I don't have any real coaching experiences yet. I've only just started my coaching journey, but I'm just curious what somebody as an experienced coach would do if they find a high performer or a high potential person trapped in a situation where that person can't really move forward because of the environment that they're in.
Oh, okay. Well, I think that's where I will refer them back to their HR to sort it out. Makes sense, right, Suki? Yeah, if it's
I would say that generally we just leave. We leave on our own accord. That's what I've been doing. So
yes, back to Rich. If the stuckness arise out of external control factors, I think that's where I think we need to take off our coach hat and address because any external mechanism that is away from the client's locus of control, it requires a little bit more directive approach to draw attention towards rather than to draw the attention from within. Yeah. So that's where you need to sort of like take a little bit more directive approach to kind of discuss what might be the way to address some of these external factors.
So yeah, I'm thinking I'm aware of somebody who kind of matches the profile of a high potential, but that person works in a situation where his CEO isn't letting him do anything more with his capabilities.
Yes, yeah, absolutely.
So,
absolutely right. So that's where you need to sort of like have a discussion. And at most what we can, it's very challenging mainly because it's an external reference point. It's not an internal reference point where we can draw something out from. So if from usually as a coach working in such a capacity, you will have certainly a rich experience of operational or organizational dynamics. So in such a context, we all know that, it is better to have a discussion with the HR or whoever the reporting officer is to address that roadmap for growth opportunity, and that cannot exist in a coaching conversation between you and the client. It has to be between the client and their reporting officer who is responsible for the roadmap. So what we can support these clients is, as you approach your whoever that is to discuss about this roadmap, what do you think needs your attention here in order to have a fruitful, meaningful, successful conversations? So then the reference point becomes within, because it's about me preparing to have that discussion with my leadership.
Right. Yeah.
But I can't have a coaching conversation to discuss about the external environment. Number one, I don't have control over the external environment to make any positive change for the client. And secondly, I'm not within the leadership to be able to comment whether it's that the leadership interest to have that environment created for this individual.
Right. It makes sense.
Yeah, thank you. Hi, Donna. What's your question?
Well, actually, I wanted to know, because we talked about the age, but it also goes the other way around. Because I just find when you coach millennials, or let's say everything from mid-90s to, it's totally different than a more mature person to me. And I think, and I say this now with a lot of heart, but they seem to know everything, quite clear on everything. And I find this sometimes a bit challenging, where you think, why do you come to me then if you know all your answers? So is that just me? Is that because I think it is a bit of an age or generation gap?
I certainly can't disagree less with you. I have no patience working with a younger client. Number one, let me just state it in this way, then you understand where I'm coming from. Number one, I don't get a lot of paying clients from this generation. If I do get any clients from this generation, they're basically pro bono coaching initiatives to support startup. And these are usually startup, means that I'm going to coach them for free as a part of some social cause. Because generally speaking, these startup people or these millennial people, they don't get to be in that radar of the company investment to have a personal coach to work with them. That is what is real. So my experience working with millennials are usually, number one, for free.
Yes.
Number two, startup context. So in those kind of contexts, since it's a startup and it's non-profit organization, why should I exhaust drain myself dry trying to figure out? I would just. So my approach will be, so what is this all about? Can you say that in 7 words? So what else needs your attention? Good. So what needs you to pay attention to in terms of dangerous signs, like the ambient light? List it down. If they go on blah 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 blah, now I says, can you say that in 7 words? Okay. Anything else that you feel that is not done? Feel good to go? And then the real coaching comes in accountability. I don't care what they say as what they want to do. I don't care. But whatever that you say in peace, that this is what you want to do or what you're committed to do or what you say that it is, then I think for this group of millennials, what will serve them in the coaching process is accountability. How would you honor what you say that how would you honor what you are committed to do? What is the price that you're prepared to pay in the events if this promise is not honored? And how would you know that you're progressing towards your desire? So these are the 3 simple questions that I usually end it off with millennials. In between the process of their whatever they want to achieve as a situation, trust me, I do not want to get in their way. The more it's just a mother talking to a grown-up kids. Mom, you're starting again. How many times do you need to tell me this? I'm not their mom, I'm not their dad. So I try not to do that because I'm not paid anyway. So I just leave them alone. Okay, do what you want to do. At the end of the day, this is the 3 questions. How would you like to honor? What price would you like to pay? And how would you know that you're making progress? Does that help you, Donna, with this? Thank you. So rather get and being antagonized by all their stories, I just leave them in peace. So what is this all about? What needs attention? Okay, great. Anything else? Nothing? Okay, good. What do you need to watch out for? And in between the way, the rest of the coaching conversation, oh, that's great. Whoa, perfect. Whoa. But the word literally just go this way. Whew, whew, whew. Trust me.
If I can add on that, speaking as a millennial, I think what I really appreciate from a coach is actually engaging in that reflective thinking, but rather than just the surface level thinking.
Yeah.
And that raising the awareness is really important. And another one is really treating us as equal. Like that's the number one problem I have with coaches that are older than me, is just that they think they know better, or they think I don't have the experience, or I don't have the answers. And that really just pisses me off.
Piss off.
Yeah, so that equal partnership is really important.
It takes already a lot from me to do that, it takes a lot. And I certainly agree with you, Donna. It's not, I find it's much easier to coach older clients rather than a younger client. Yeah, great. So we'll come. Go ahead,
Ben,
Elena. Go ahead.
Sorry, Ben, I appreciated your information around those external factors. So thanks for bringing that up, Rich. But just wanted to ask, when there's no HR involved, just wondered the approach. Would you take a different approach when coaching clients around the external factors with the working environment?
I would then make it as an offering, as a piece of advice for the person to think about it.
Okay.
Yeah, if there's no sponsors behind, I would just say, may I offer you some advice? And what I think about this, not from a coach perspective, but from a consultant perspective or a third person party perspective.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Yes.
Appreciate that.
Thank you. Marion, I'm so sorry. What would you like to say, Marion? Hello, is it Mary? Hello, is it Mary? I'm not able to answer.
No, I wasn't trying to say anything.
Okay, good, no problem. So we're coming right to the tip of our time here. So really appreciate you guys joining us, and I hope that this initiative supports our friends in New Zealand. Woo! And please share the good news to your friends in your cohort to tell them, hey guys, you come on, join us in the webinar. Okay, so I know that the upcoming webinar is going to be a little bit challenging for all of you. It's going to be at 8:30 Singapore time, which means it's 12:30 in the morning in New Zealand time. And I can see Richard saying, nah, that's not going to work for me. I'm not going to show up as in my pajamas. Well, okay, but I just want to make sure that you have the piece of information to consider. And if not, join us in September. 28th of August this month, Sarah will be doing a demonstration at 3 p.m. Singapore time, which is basically 7 p.m. in New Zealand time. So that is another good opportunity for you to take advantage of this learning platform. Okay, so with that in mind, thank you so very much. We'll see you again.